The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 18 Theatre. The old man who wanted a death wish by slapping my hand away was named Chin. Which was an odd name in itself, but his story is even odder. He is older than when powers were being made, but he made the deal with the being that granted powers and has been for about 15 years a super-powered being with a unique skill. He adopted Fergie a couple years ago and doesn't know why Fergie is how he is. But he has yet to explain why he is a grouch. Pure idiot who doesn't know what he wants. Besides, I don't sell to minors, Chin declares as he crosses his skinny and frail arms. You're the only one that can allow me to become stronger. So make it happen, I state forcefully. Roxy steps in front of me. Sorry sir for his attitude. But if you do recall, I did you a favor and I'm here to collect. I want you to forge him a weapon using the blood of a selected person that I helped you get quite a bit ago. Roxy states mysteriously. Chin curls his grey goatee in between his fingers, lost in thought. Fine. But you know that even the favor you did for me to get that blood is not enough to build, let alone pay for such a weapon. Besides, what use does this man get from a blade? I can understand if he could manipulate metal or blood. But I can't understand a normal-looking man would need with such a blade. Roxy looks at Chin and lets out a sigh. She reaches into her bra and pulls out a check. This should be enough to pay for your services. And the weapon he'll get is a bastard sword. I think you know what to do from there for the design. Plus, with the humans we are talking about, I expect only perfection. She says sternly as Chin takes the check from her. Chin inspects the check closely before smacking his lips. Is this man worth this much? Chin asks with his face scrunched up and his eyes staring at Roxy, looking for a reason. And here I am standing behind her wondering what they were talking about. All I got from this little exchange is that she's paying a lot of money for me to get a huge sword. A sword that I haven't seen and is possibly something that I'll never use realistically unless I got a license to wield it in public. He's worth my life in cash, Roxy says without a second thought. Chin looks at her for a couple seconds more before looking over at me. He shakes her head almost disapprovingly as he walks behind his counter and bends over, out from sight. Grunting as he stands up and throws a mini fridge up onto the counter. He gets up on a black stool before putting on black leather gloves. Now boy, you have to understand one thing about these weapons. They're not like any other when it comes to what they are. These weapons I make from blood take the shape of the desired weapon, and then from them I forge them into the shape that I want them to become. Then the mold. I'll just show you. But when it's done, don't treat him as if he's just some sword. He opens the fridge and takes out a glass jar the size of his head that was full of a bright crimson liquid. As Chin opens the lid, I and Roxy take a step back. I grab a hold of her hand as I prepare myself for what might happen. Chin takes off the lid and from there the magic really happens. The blood jumps out of the jar and floats as a rotating sphere in the palm of Chin's left hand. He throws the blood up in the air. The sphere of blood then takes a huge mold of the blade that was soon to be. The handle was about 2 feet long with the pommel being a crescent shape. Then the handguard forms next, being 1 foot long, parallel with the pommel. Then the blood began to glow bright red, as if crimson lightning was jumping from pommel through handle, and then back from handguard to pommel. Then what was amazing was a huge blade rises from the handguard, shoots straight up before flattening. Then, as most blades most have 2 sides. The front of the blade was like any other. 1 single edge, and from the looks of it was incredibly sharp. Then the other side, more blades shot out, making the back of the sword look like sharp teeth as it went from ONT long blade to a shorter one, and shorter one after that. And a shorter one after that one. The crimson lightning shot from the bottom of the pommel to the every blade tip. The lightning courses and pulses as it travels easily through the blood. Then when I thought it was done, the lightning grew brighter, turning blue like veins. And it got weirder as the weapon began beating like a heart. I grip Roxy's hand harder as my heart beats INC with the sword's pulses. Metal then begins to wrap itself around every inch of the blade like flesh. Clink and clanking as it rises up from pommel to every edge of the sword. As the metal completely covered the blade, I could hear from inside the beating of what I could swear was a heart. The entirety of the sword was as tall as I was, and it was terrifying to be around. I could feel the immense power behind it, clawing at the metal that entraps it. As my heart raced with anticipation, I could hear the sword beating louder with mine. Boy. I give you Fiacla. Chin shouts with excitement as the sword drops and sinks into the ground, cleaving through concrete as if it was just butter. Zensilariku.
That was chapter 18, Fakela, or Fiacla, or whatever the hell the AI calls it. Now we go on to chapter 19, the powers of Fiacla. Or Fakela, or whatever.
The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 19, the powers of Fiacla. The blade was sticking out of the floor like the legendary Excalibur. It was just fascinating to feel the power that was emanating from such an intimidating-looking blade. I looked over at Roxy and she was smiling painfully. I looked down and I see my hand nearly crushing hers. I release my grip but she quickly snatches up my hand. It's okay. You didn't break it, she leans over and whispers. I smile and then look back at the blade. My body shivers at the thought of wielding it. Yeah, you are looking at a one-of-a-kind blade boy. Seeing as he actually likes a dumbass like you. I wonder why that is. Chin looks at me as he says this cynically. Why do you keep referring to the blade to a man? I finally ask the strange question out of the way. Because these blades take form, and what most people don't know about them is that beneath the iron that makes up the skin are veins, blood. And will be in sync with the person that the blade takes a liking to. If the blade is wielded by anyone else, then it simply won't cut anything. It would just be an oversized butter knife if anything at that point. But the point is that since that beast in my floor is nearly a living being of metal and mass destruction, it has an identity. And because the owner of the blood was male, the blade too is male. And the name Fiacla is the nickname that was granted to the owner of the blood. Sharktooth, Chin states proudly as he crosses his arms. And Sharktooth was just a bit older than me and we used to go to blood drives and donate. But he got diagnosed with leukemia and me and the others needed money. So we drew his blood and sold it to Mr. Chin here. Roxy states as her eyes lower to the floor with sadness filling them. She sold what I believe is her best friend's blood so that the others would live longer. She really thinks about everyone as a whole, and that is the reason why everyone respects her so deeply. And Sharktooth was powerful when it comes to powers. He was able to transform into a giant beast with grey skin, razor-sharp teeth, and huge claws. On top of that, he was able to manipulate water that was touching his skin. He was just elite. He was elite for sure. Sorrow was now in her tone as she fakely smiled at the blade. And so respectfully you and everyone will call him Fiacla, Chin states sternly. I walk up to the sword, releasing my grip on Roxy's hand. I will call him Fiacla, I state as I grab the metal hilt with my right hand. The metal being hot to the touch upon touching it. Gripping it began to cool. The power bursting through me like a bolt of electricity. I could feel a whole new feeling of strength as my veins began to bulge out from my arms. A rush of adrenaline pulses through me as I yank the blade out of the ground and hold it upright. And now me and him shall go know a test run with our new power. I smile as I see myself in the blade. Beware, because of the cancer that Fiacla has running through it, the blade will act strangely from time to time. I would expect it to suddenly switch from razor sharp to dull. But again, it also has a chance of curing itself of the cancer, which can possibly evolve it. But it's rare, and an idiot like you can't possibly do it. I look at Chin, not caring of his insults. The power running through this blade was enough. And now I had 24/7 all to myself. I was more than excited. I wanted to swing it without remorse. The weight of this blade is weirdly heavy for its size. It feels as if it weighs around 200 pounds. I'm amazed that I can wield it, I state with an enormous smile and joy in my tone. I couldn't believe what this one thing that I was holding in my hands was doing to my body. Hey, now since we got the weapon, can you please give us a sheath to go? She asks Chin. Chin looks at Fergie, who was already holding a huge box that had a strap attached to it. Fergie walks over to me and opens the box. Inside was a nice red cushion to rest the sword on. I place the sword inside and Fergie closes the case. I sling it over my shoulder and nod at Fergie. Boy, if you unleash that sword and get me arrested, I will make sure you pay for it. Because our evidence room is not a place a weapon of mine should go. I nod my head yes before me and Roxy walk out of the building. Now with this case I can at least tell others that it was some sort of tube-like instrument. But I need to see Bob. If my memory serves me right, then I know that he would be at his house right now. Bob lives on the west side of the city in front of WB Bank. Hey, since I helped you, can you possibly consider staying at the shelter today? Since the day is nearly over, it would be pointless to go anywhere, Roxy says as she reaches for my hand. I take a hold of her hand and genuinely smile. I wanted to, and it felt right too. Yeah. I think whatever I had planned can wait. Besides Jack's cooking tonight, I say before me and her share in a cute little giggle. I felt so happy. At least until the red and blue flashing lights shined brightly off at the building. Zensilariku. So far so...
That was chapter 19, The Powers of Fakela. We are now moving on to chapter 20. Toby runs.
The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 20. Toby runs. The cops parked in front of us, blocking me from escaping. I reach down for my weapon, but Roxy quickly grabs my hand and turns me to face her. She was smiling with tears in her eyes. What's going on? I ask as I turn my head to see police walking towards me with the guns out and pointing at me. Roxy gently placed her hand on my cheek, turning my head back towards her. I'm going to distract them. I just want you to leave and be happy. I'm going to confess to your crimes. You saved me, and now it's my chance to save you. Tears ran down her face slowly, twinkling as the night casts over us. The lights of police cars flashing on our faces. The red and blue light is suffocating around me. I felt shaky as I stood there staring at her face, trying to get every little detail of it sketched into my brain. You don't have to do this, I state. Raise your hands in the air, the policeman shouts. I know. But for you I have to do this. Otherwise, why did you save me? She says this with a smile on her face. Her tears drop from her chin down to the ground. She lets go of my hands as she raises hers in the sky. Mine drop to my side as I turn my body to face the police. There was no fighting the police in this world. For me, even with my sword next to me, I wouldn't be able to run forever. Put your hands in the air now, the policeman continues to shout as he waves his gun in our faces. I slowly raise my hands in the air. Two policemen walk up behind us and put our hands behind our backs before cuffing us. They shove us into two different cars, all while telling us our rights. But we were speechless. Especially me, as I look at her smile slowly fade away behind the cop's window. They take away my box and shove it in the back of the vehicle. The cop enters the front of the car and begins to drive. The other cop followed just behind us. Boy, you're in trouble. Might as well confess to your crimes already, the officer says with a smirk on his face. You're not getting a rouse out of me. Just tell me why you're arresting me, I state as I look in his rearview mirror, trying to spot Roxy. Who said that you're in trouble? Your mom just called us looking for you. And since we found you, you're lucky that we can't charge you as an adult. All we can do is return you home and have CPS see what is the problem, the officer says while raising his eyebrow at me. Wait, so? But why come in guns blazing at me and Roxy? I ask as I look at the back of his head curiously. Oh, that's because we heard you're violent. And that box that was slinged over your shoulder was a weapon. Only reason why we had our guns raised at you. And that girl is known for doing some nasty things. So we thought we might as well bring her in while I drop you off at your house. His voice was relaxed, sir. I don't think he is lying. What do you mean? Roxy doesn't seem like she could do anything wrong, I curiously state. At least that is what everyone thinks because of her power. But what people don't know is, well, that's classified. But what I can say is that she is wanted for murder. And you as a young impressionable man should not be hanging around her. I looked at the officer but was tapping my foot vigorously as I tried to think of what to say. Oh, and kid, I don't think I have to say this, but we know you had a run-in with the Icebreaker gang, and I just need to say as a police officer is that I will arrest you if I see you around them. He holds up the key to the cuffs that bind me. And don't think for a second I won't. I didn't think that he wouldn't do it if he saw it. He would be in tiny little pieces right now if Roxy didn't stop my hand. Is that really what is on your mind? A familiar voice asks. What did he think of Jean? Same as usual for a runaway or worse, the officer asks. He was thinking of how he was about to slaughter you and your partner if that girl didn't stop him. I heard that voice before. You're the shrink from the shelter. I shout out. Oh, so that's how you know G. Well, kid, not to pull off the theater from your eyes, but powers and swords are outdated. And if you were able to kill me, then sadly for you, execution on sight is mandatory. And the top chef would have to be the one to execute you. Sir, I wouldn't have if I were you. But again, you don't strike me as a smart kid. Caleb, you can be more sensitive to the kid. He's been through a lot. He even saved Roxy from an overdose. Jean says. Where was she in this blasted car? I can't believe that she was doing a sting operation this entire time. Oh, so he was the kid you were talking about. Well, either way, it was dumb of him to run. Honk. I look to my right, and then just like that, light comes shining through the windshield, blinding and consuming the rest of the world with it. The sound of metal scraping and jumping around as brakes and rubber tires burst. Windows blast open into shards as they cross the tumbling car. Crash. Thud. Crack. Ah, I scream out in pain as my head slams off at the roof of the car. Snap. My arm breaks off of the bars of the cop car. I blink a few times as the rolling stops and everything is still. Roaring sounds of ringing bounces inside my ears as the world slowly comes back out of a blur. Then as the ringing subsided, I heard feet shuffling towards the car. Help, I shout out. 4 hands reach into the door and grab my shirt. As they painfully pulled me out of the crashed vehicle, the world became clear as glass in terms of vision. I saw Helios standing in front of me with my good arm over his shoulder. Blood was dripping off of me, soaking the ground and my clothes. Don't worry. Us icebreakers always help one of our own. And now since I got you, we got bigger plans to take charge of. Helios states with a menacing smile.
And that was chapters 18 through 20 on the Gourmet Gladiator. You can check this story out on NKit for free. And like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.